and participants. Namaskar and good afternoon to all. I would like to call our esteemed guests and speakers on the dais please for this session.
Said call us.
Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, sir. Professor Alok Chakrawal, sir. Professor Ram Singh. Professor Pravakar Sahu. Dr. N.K. Noriyal. Professor Charan Singh. I, Barkha Chambal, an assistant professor in the Department of Management Studies of SOL, will be your anchor for this plenary session. With immense pleasure and great anticipation, I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to this 106th Annual Conference of Indian Economic Association, organized in collaboration with SOL. This plenary session talks about the theme Aspirational India at the rate 2047. As we here gather today, we embark on a collective journey towards envisioning and crafting a future that echoes the aspirations and dreams of every Indian. The year 2047 marks a significant milestone, the centenary year of India's independence. I encourage all of us gathered here to engage wholeheartedly, exchange perspectives, challenge existing paradigms, and most importantly, collaborate towards actionable outcomes that resonate with the spirit of aspirational Bharat. Dear participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed panelists, each an eminent leader in their respective field, bring forth a plethora of knowledge that is instrumental to our discussions. We are honored to have the esteemed presence of Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Director General of RIS, Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, Member of the Capacity Building Commission, Government of India, Professor Alok Chakrawal, Vice Chancellor of Guru Ghasidas Central University, Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh, Professor Ram Singh from Delhi School of Economics, and Dr. D.K. Noriyal from IIT Roorkee, along with Professor Charan Singh, sir. Our plenary session today promises to be an intellectually stimulating and enlightening forum as we gather insights from the eminent panel of distinguished speakers. I would now like to invite Professor V.K. Malhotra, sir. Okay. To felicitate the guests with a pot and a memento. Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, sir. Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, sir. Professor Alok Chakrawal. Professor Ram Singh. Dr. Charan Singh.
You can hand over the session to the professor.
Okay. Without delays, I would like to now introduce our next expert speaker, which is Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. Professor Chaturvedi is an esteemed economist and Director General at Research and Information System for Developing Countries. With a PhD in economics, his expertise lies in the domain of development economics, particularly focusing on development finance and SDGs. A global justice fellow at Macmillan Center. I invite him on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, colleagues, friends. We are already running late, and I was just negotiating with my panelists. How do we deliver? We are standing between you and lunch. This theme is extremely important. At the outset, I congratulate Professor Malhotra, Professor Rameshanji, for guiding us and for getting this idea of what kind of economic development trajectory we should travel on so that we arrive in 2047 with the developed variables that are there for in any economy and for Indian economy for that matter. And the panel is extremely accomplished, as you all are seeing. I think just a couple of points I would make in the beginning for a few minutes, and then we would go around the table to quickly get things going. First and foremost, of course, as we are seeing and we heard in the inaugural session, the idea of India achieving 5 trillion, the exchange rate impact that was talked about. We also heard of 5 trillion 2026, whether we would be the third largest or the fifth largest. The huge decline that we saw in case of Japan this year, from 5 trillion economy, they have become 4.2 trillion economy. And that is largely because of the devaluation that Japanese yen has seen vis-a-vis USD. So the external connect, the external orientation, which we talked about in 80s and 90s, whole set of recommendations came up in terms of how external orientation prevails when you are intending to push up the economic growth. That largely is an issue where we still have to pay more attention in terms of how do we insulate ourselves. Same is happening with the German economy with the 4.4 trillion, which is likely to come down to 3.9 trillion, is something that we are seeing in terms of both inflation management and also the appreciation related challenges. And that, I think, is largely in terms of how economies insulate themselves. If you see the literature, some six variables have already been discussed on how Japan, so the central bank governor of Japan issued a statement sometime on 20th of November and explained why the size of the economy from 5 trillion has come down to 4.2 trillion. But I think the general agreement that you see in the statement that Germany issued and what central bank governor of Japan said, the factors are not very different in terms of the cycle of management getting linked with a US economy. There was reference to the excess supply in China, the property market that has almost collapsed in the Chinese economy, the spillover effect of that on Southeast Asian countries and on others, particularly the US firms, which were major investors. Those spillovers are something which are creating wider challenges for US. Excessive externalization of USD is also bringing in its own effects. Today, we have no time to explain these dimensions, but I would just like to highlight 5 points which are important, and I would very quickly do that in next 4 minutes. First and foremost is a set of variables which are important for any economy. So as India is moving towards 2047, what factors are important? And I think as Dani Roderick says, institution, but now if you realize institutions can work only when there is political stability. And that part is absolutely important for almost all countries of the global south and also for emerging markets to have that political stability. Demography is the second factor which has already been identified and highlighted all across. Now, the luxury that several countries had earlier part of this century has gone is in terms of factoring in the net zero strategy. And that net zero strategy is the third important dimension that we have to bring in. As I was saying, the external factors influence. So, a favorable geopolitics is important. The current foreign policy in India is bringing in all markets together. So, it is OECD which is with us, but also non-OECD countries, the global south, they are also part of this. And this process with democratic trends and an inclusive development strategy is something which is falling within that category. Then comes in the social enterprise, and they, I think, whether we want Chebol-led South Korean strategy to come in, or we want social enterprises. And as I am delighted to have Balaji with us here, the social enterprises are the ones which would make the whole process more inclusive and more substantive. And this something is important in terms of what kind of legal regimes come in, and that's what I was discussing with Professor Ram a while ago. That both the democratic trends, the political stability, and legal components of our policy frameworks, they are important. Like for instance, if you see all the FTAs, the bigger challenge for us after collapse of dispute settlement panel in WTO is in terms of arbitrage that is coming in and where we go. All of us have to land up in Singapore because India hasn't built up the necessary legal frameworks and ability to enforce economic agreements that FTAs and investment agreements bring in. The amount of energy that we have spent on defining BITs, the bilateral investment treaties, that would have to be revisited from legal perspective so that investors are attracted. After the new BIT has come in, not a single country has come forward to invest in under the BIT. So we need to work that out, and the line of distinction between economics and law is extremely thin now. And as a result, the gift city which has come up in Ahmedabad, more efforts are being made to focus on this dimension. The other 2 points are in terms of culture, and the French Economics Association, Professor Malhotra, had a huge session last year. Manufacturing is coming in. In fact, if you see, more and more global institutions are now looking at Asia-wide industrial policy. The latest annual report of UNIDO talks about how this has to go forward. And this is the reason why if India is missing out on RCEP, if India is missing out on CPTPP and also on the new provisions that are coming in terms of regional trade cooperation, we need to see how manufacturing becomes part of it. The legal regime gives it the bandwidth that it requires, and then we factor in the dimensions that are there. Even if you see the three acts that US has passed, including the Inflation Reduction Act or the CHIPS Act or even Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, all the three acts are largely providing support to this. The last point that I want to mention is in terms of the new growth strategy that India is coming up with. And as you see, n number of distinctions, both from development models and also in terms of our own take on those, I think are important. We still teach in our universities development models which came up at a time when Europe was unfolding. So whether you see Rosenstein Rodden talking about big push or starting from Adam Smith, Ricardo, and coming right up to Roma, you find a huge range of development models which have very little to do in terms of countries under transition. Indian Economic Association and platforms like this, in my view, should take this dialogue forward in terms of how India or the global south contributing its own growth models. And I think Aspiration India is not just about per capita income or size of economy. As Dr. Berry was mentioning, size of economy is just one another illusion. I think the important part is to make the process more inclusive, and we as intellectual contribute to that idea of development. So I would stop here, and I also have a role of moderating the session. So I would now invite Dr. Balasubramaniam. Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for inviting me, a fully declared non-economist, into an IEA conference. And when Malhotraji reached out to me, I was not sure whether he made a mistake. But then I can understand the larger context in which IEA focuses on this kind of topics. Aspirational India at 2047 would not happen if you cannot take the largest driver of that aspiration, the state itself. State capacity, and we have all kinds of literature seeing like the state and all that, but I think we need to start seeing the state the way the current government sees the state today, and deconstruct a substantial slice of it. So I come from the capacity building commission, the heart and soul of what is called Mission Karma Yogi, a direct visionary conceptualization and now actioning of Prime Minister Modi himself. What he believes is, if you have to build the $5 trillion economy, if you have to really talk about Atmanirbhar, if you have to talk about citizen-centric governance and Jan Bhagidari, the state as an organ to implement all this change, it needs to have the capacity in the first place. And that is what I'm going to talk about. I just want to, I don't know whether this will work. Okay. No, the sound. The volume.
इसी सोच के सरकार ने ब्यूरोक्रेसी पीपल सेंट्रिक अप्रोच बढ़ाने एफिशिएंसी बढ़ाने के लिए सरकार ने मिशन कर्मयोगी और कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग कमीशन की शुरुआत की।
I would, and I take off from where Sachin left, talking about Danny Roderick and other people's work. India has a special context. And when we inherited the bureaucracy in 1947, we inherited the ICS, and we have to see it in the context in which we inherited it. The famous paradigm, without offense to any of the civil servants in this room, it was the joke around 47 was it was neither Indian nor civil nor a service. And the country, when it got its independence, I don't blame them. The fabric of the system was to actually respond to the British administrative systems, and they were basically designed to collect taxes and ensure law and order. And suddenly they were responsible for running the country with the new government and in the sort of aspirations of a free India. And at that point of time, with less than 2% of global GDP, with the trade what it was, the state had to be a provider state, and the bureaucracy had to learn how to respond to providing. So whether it was making bread or running an airport, that is how the state was designed for, and the capacities of the state ought to be meant for that. But 90s, after economic liberalization, again we need to understand that economic liberalization happened from a government which had not prepared its bureaucracy to liberalize, and we can't lose sight of that. And so suddenly you're all the time for a long time you're trying to regulate, telling Bajaj not to make that extra scooter or telling a steel plant not to make that extra kilogram of steel, constantly regulating and licensing, and then you're asking the government to suddenly open up. The system takes time to learn, and they learned. But today the Honorable Prime Minister talks of a partnership state, and I come from civil society, and most of my work, including my first book was titled I the Citizen, talks about citizenship in a dimension where we are partners. And when the Prime Minister talks of partnership, we got to understand states love agency and control. No government likes to let go of agency. No government likes to let go of control. They have to decide how we live. They have to decide what we'll eat, whether we'll eat rice or millets. In that context and construct, suddenly we have a prime minister who says, let's share the agency and control with citizens. And in that context, he says everybody is part of Team India and everybody only then can build a new India. So I think this itself is something which is completely fundamentally unknown to any bureaucracy in the world, because we are trained to mitigate the operation, to mitigate the violence that state brings on its citizens in terms of administration. And that's all you can keep doing better and better. But here, suddenly to share agency and control is asking too much. So to me, COVID brought us an excellent opportunity. And the way India managed its COVID, and you should only read about what other countries, how they mismanaged COVID to understand how well we did our jobs. Sometimes we Indians hesitate to pat ourselves on our back. Even though we do a damn good job, we always have to find problems in it. But that is a time it exposed that boundaries between sectors are just artificial. The state, despite being the principal mover of development in this country, mover of economic growth, cannot do it alone. And that's what the Prime Minister keeps repeating. We need everybody. And that's it, sabka saath. It can't be thought, it can't exclude anybody. So, and the citizens, civil society organizations, private sector, government, all of us came together, and that's what COVID battle was won. And if you cannot, I was coming from civil society, I thought all capitalists are sinners. I had considered state to be inefficient, and I'm thankfully wrong on both counts. I think what really works today is, can we bring the best of Samaj, Sarkar and Bazaar together? And that is how a new India can shape. And the reality of a new India, I'm seeing it from the lens of the bureaucracy to deliver to this economic growth. We live in the world of deep fake and fake news and all that. So ICT is no longer about big data. It's also about trying to tell the truth with the data that we have in a way in which it's actually the truth. Because we are all living in a world which is so complex and everybody is interconnected. I still remember of days when most of my life I lived in the forest with indigenous tribals, and during those days the newspaper would come a week later, and that's when the news would come to me. Today my tribal friends from the forest call me within a second or send me a video or a WhatsApp. If one officer misbehaves with them, I get a WhatsApp with recorded communication. So world has changed so dramatically. Citizens are so informed. So we live in a world where citizens think subsidies are their entitlement. Now that's a reality. The political economy is altered to such an extent that voting has become transactional to the subsidies that get announced. And in that context, to build development is going to be quite a challenge. And I think the political world is also recognizing, if I don't deliver, I won't get elected. That's good for the country too. New technologies are opening up enormous possibilities. We are today managing a learning management system which is the largest in the world. All the learning material that our civil servants need is available on that system, and people can just sign in and acquire competencies. We have measurably mapped 3.2 million civil servants in the first circle of Government of India. Totally, we have 20 million civil servants in the first circle, and we have mapped their functions, we have mapped their roles, we have mapped their activities, we have mapped their competencies, what kind of behavioral competencies they have, what kind of functional competencies they have, what kind of domain competencies that we have, and the algorithm picks up by employee name and ID what are they deficit in and what are the courses recommended for them. So that's what technology can do today. So I just want to look at, if you're talking about Amrit Kal, to deliver on that Amrit Kal, how is the future of work going to look like? Now, it's very nice to design a future, but if you can't design, what is work going to look like? So for us, the biggest challenge is defining public administration. Now, whether COVID vaccine is a public good or a private good, or the challenge is it's a hybrid now. So in a world of hybrids, everything seems to be getting hybridized. We are redefining the postal department as much as regulating the courier services. So that's a reality of life for us, all of us today. So work and understanding work is our business. And in this context of public work, where public administration gets redefined, how is the workplace going to look like? Possibly I can only mention one very important department of Government of India. During COVID, they lost very senior officers. And when they looked at their work and their achievements in that 8 to 10 months of disruption and working from home, their working efficiency was the highest. They actually brought out more orders, more promotions, everything during that time. So is working from home a new normal for government also? And in a time when private sector is saying no longer working from home is fashionable. So we have all these complexities of workplace. How should the workplace look like? And today, if you look at the new Vista, the Central Vista development that's happening, government offices and the complexity of government offices is not like the movies where you see a dirty, dusty room and you drop the files and dust rises. I think that's a thing of the past. Soon we'll have a government office which will put corporates to shame, the way it's all emerging. So workplace and hygiene factors is also part of a job. Unless the official is happy doing what he's doing, he's not going to deliver all these Amritkal demands that we're making. And finally, the work person. And for the work person, what kind of a person we need, what kind of competencies we need, all these are things we're talking about. So I'm not going to get into this. What drives capacity building for us is very simply five things the Prime Minister has mandated. First is the ministry capable of delivering and aligning to the $5 trillion goal? If it is, great. If it is not, what are the deficits? How do you map it out? Can we bring in ease of living? Can we really look at citizen-centric delivery of goods and services? Can we look at Atmanirbhar Bharat beyond a slogan? Can we actually think deeply, use emerging technologies? So the first transition we are doing is getting civil servants, in the Prime Minister's words, Karmachari Bhav se Karmayogi jaise sochna chahiye ye log. So getting them to understand, and remember, with pride I can tell you, the entire competency framework of India, the public servants of India, validated by very advanced thinkers in public administration, public HR management, and CHROs of the corporate sector, we are now coming out with Karma Yogi competencies completely based on the Bhagavad Gita. We are and it's rationally explained. It's not just a romantic fashion statement that we're going to put out there. And so we are showing this transition. How do you train our officers to stop thinking I'm a salaried employee, to start thinking I have a role to play in building a new India? So we appreciate motives, what drives a person and keeps the motives alive. Do we have a toolkit for them to perform? Do we have the means to deliver on what we are asking them to do? And that's where training comes in. And then where are they going to get posted? It's going to be a thing of the past where officers get posted based on either the pressures they bring on the system or just like that. Today, before they report to a new post, they have to take courses on domain competencies. If I'm Joint Secretary Agriculture today and I'm transferred as Joint Secretary Health tomorrow, before I take charge, I must complete the domain courses necessary for me to start taking charge of health. Which means, just imagine 3 to 4 years from now, we'll have a highly talented bureaucracy trained specifically with the design intent of allowing them to perform, which itself is a big thing. And moving away from rules. I'm not saying rules are not important. It's not about telling our citizens 100 rules why their job can't be done, but seeing myself as my role is to help facilitate ease of living. My role is to build a new India. And how do I shift from a rule-based thinking to a role-based approach? We have done that. And so the Karma Yogi competencies, quickly I'll say, there are only 4 sankalpas that we say every Indian and every public servant should have. One is development, the $5 trillion, all that inclusive growth, the Vikasa story. Second is, let's have some pride in everything Indian, everything Bharatiya. Instead of wasting time in the dialogue of should it be Bharat or India, let's feel the Bharatiya inside, and that's all that matters. So can we get that pride in our legacy? Can we fulfill our dharma, the kartavya that we need to do, and see India as one integral whole and not as just an aggregation of states? So that is what a public servant is expected to do, and for that we think 4 gunas are required. First is, that's what we call the first virtue is swadhyaya, understanding myself. Most of us don't even do that. Sorry. The second, and understanding what do I know, what do I do, how should I go about it. Second is a very critical thing. We can't do anything alone today. Collaboration is not a fashion statement. It's a norm. Whether it is in the operating room as a doctor, I know you can't just do a surgery on your own. You need your team with you. Similarly, our mandate is also desilializing government. One joint secretary not talking to the joint secretary next door is real, but it has to go away. And that's what Sahakaryata can bring in. Rajya Karma, understanding the state and the systems, getting in design thinking and the systems approach to the entire problem of public administration, and understanding my dharma as a public servant, my swadharma, the moment I join public service, is to serve the citizen. So we do this in a very technical way. All the competencies get mapped and measured. And with this, we hope an aspirational India can be led and facilitated by a public system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Patri. I think it's a great opportunity for us to capture the idea of partnership and also those of you who are probably were not able to notice in his introduction, he's a trained physician, medical MBBS doctor who worked with civil society in Karnataka, but was one of the first ones to come up with the idea of impact assessment and evaluation. And he teaches at the school in in Cornell. I just finished his, so every year, one semester he spends there, he just come back and as you gather, he is focusing on quality of government service, which is the part of the commission that has the mandate from the government to take that forward. Without further ado, let me now invite Professor Aloki, who is Vice Chancellor of Guru Ghazidas University. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Sachin. I don't know. Do you have my presentation?
Yes. This one, sir.
Yeah. But if I go by this presentation, it will take not less than 1 hour. And I promised my moderator that I'll be taking not more than 5 minutes. So, see, this is the beauty of a teacher, that how to comprehend a 1 hour content in 5 minutes. So, here I go, and the topic is Aspirational India. And I'll start with a very well chanted and enchanted verse of Iqbal, कि कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जमा हमारा। भारतवर्ष पूरी दुनिया में अपनी हस्ती को मनवा रहा है और इसलिए एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया है। अभी पिछले कुछ दिनों में भारतवर्ष ने 18 देशों के साथ ये एग्रीमेंट साइन किया कि दे विल डील ओनली इन रुपी, नॉट इन डॉलर्स। और डॉलर्स के कारण से जो हमारा रुपी डॉलर का प्रॉब्लम हो रहा था, वो आप देखिएगा कि आने वाले समय में जो हमारा अमृत काल है, बाय 2047 इंडिया विल बी डिक्टेटिंग द वर्ल्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ करेंसी लीडरशिप। जो सबसे बड़ी बात मैं आपको बता दे रहा हूं, अगस्त महीने में हमने मोबाइल प्रोडक्शन में $2 बिलियन मोबाइल्स का हमने बेंचमार्क क्रॉस किया है और अपने आप में ये दुनिया का नंबर 1 मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंट्री बना। आपको मैं बता दे रहा हूं। मैं अभी विदेश में था, मेरे हाथ में 15 आईफोन मैक्स प्रो है। इट इज मेड इन इंडिया एंड दिस इज द ग्रेटेस्ट अचीवमेंट ऑफ इंडिया। इंडिया इज डिक्टेटिंग फॉर्च्यून 500 कंपनीज ऑन देयर टर्म। भारतवर्ष में वो आना चाहते हैं, अपनी फैक्ट्री लगाना चाहते हैं। जब 2020 में पूरी दुनिया में कोरोना चल रहा था, 56 कंपनियों ने चाइना छोड़ा और 56 की 56 हिंदुस्तान में आना चाहती थी, मगर हमारे यहाँ लेबर लॉस की प्रॉब्लम थी। 9 स्टेट्स ने अपने तुरंत अपने यहाँ पे चेंजेस किए, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने भी किया और अब आप देखिए लाइन लगी हुई है जो इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रहे हैं। 111 1.11 lakh crore is going to be invested in only Uttar Pradesh in mobile industry, and that includes Tata, Hiranandani and many other players. There are as many as 11 players who are going to invest in India, and that includes like Augusta। जब इंडिया में आया तो ये कहा गया कि हम ऑगस्टा खरीदेंगे मगर बनाएंगे इंडिया में। मेक इन इंडिया लगभग 24 नवंबर 2015 की बात है, बॉम्बे में लॉन्च हुआ मेक इन इंडिया और कहा गया कि आप विदेशों से ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग के नाम पे बड़े पंगे होते थे, तो ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग की बात नहीं करेंगे, हम हिंदुस्तान में बनाएंगे। और आज जितनी भी ऑटोमोबाइल कंपनी है, जितनी भी सोफिस्टिकेटेड प्रोडक्ट है, जितनी भी आईटी कंपनीज है, वो भारतवर्ष में बना रही है और ये है एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया। विकसित भारत अभियान जिसका अभी माननीय मोदी जी ने आरंभ किया है, अगर उसके बारे में हम देखें तो भारतवर्ष अपने आप में पूरी दुनिया को विकसित होने का सही रास्ता दिखा रहा है। आज जिस तरह से चाइना लोगों को डेट ट्रैप में ले रहा है, वो भारत नहीं कर रहा है, वो एक दोस्ती निभा रहा है, इन्वेस्टमेंट की बात कर रहा है। आप लोगों को जानकारी होगी, इन द मंथ ऑफ नवंबर लास्ट ईयर 2022 हिंदुस्तान ने अपना सीबीडीसी लॉन्च कर दिया, सेंट्रल बैंक डिजिटल करेंसी, और उसके दोनों वेरिएंट आ गए। इनिशियली 12 शहरों में हमने इसको लॉन्च किया था और सारे जितने भी कमर्शियल बैंक है उनके ट्रांजैक्शंस डिजिटल करेंसी में हो रहे हैं। इसके अलावा एक आध दो और बातें मैं बात करके अपनी बात खत्म करूंगा। डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन में आज पूरी दुनिया नंबर 1 पे है। भारत में पूरी दुनिया के जितने डिजिटल ट्रांजैक्शन हो रहे हैं, मोर देन 40% ऑफ इट इज बीइंग डन हियर इन इंडिया। आज रुपी, फोन पे, गूगल पे, ये सारी चीजें आप देख लीजिए। और हुआ ये है कि सारी इकोनॉमी का डिजिटाइजेशन होना शुरू हो गया। हम 5वें नंबर की इकोनॉमी है, बट वेरी सून वी आर गोइंग टू सरपास चाइना एंड वी विल बी हैविंग बेटर ऑप्शंस टू बिकम
नंबर 3 इकोनॉमी। और आज की तारीख में भी अगर हम परचेजिंग पावर पैरिटी पे जाएं तो आर इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू जीडीपी is coming to $13.033 trillion, which is just next to अमेरिका एंड चाइना। तो इस हिसाब से अगर देखा जाए तो आज भारतवर्ष में पूरा एक बहुत बड़ी क्रांति हो रही है। मैं एक बात बता दूं, इकोनॉमी एक ऐसी चीज है जो आइसोलेशन में नहीं जी जा सकती है। इसमें आपकी सारी चीज आती है, पॉलिटिकल टर्म्स भी आते हैं। जब एन जयशंकर से पूछा गया कि बाई परचेजिंग पेट्रोलियम फ्रॉम रशिया आर यू नॉट fueling war in Ukraine and Russia, then he immediately responded that by purchasing gas from Russia, you are not fueling. European countries are free to buy from there, but you are not allowing India. So we are dictating the terms. हमने हमारी foreign policy को strengthen किया, and moreover, the most important thing is that हमारी national education policy, which is trying and thriving upon setting up entrepreneurs and inculcating the culture of entrepreneurship here in India. And we are having good number of unicorns. We are having good entrepreneurs, startups here in India. And I'm very sure that India is going to be world leader in coming days. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Thank you.
So I have completed.
Thanks, Anuji. You have done it in record time. Thanks a lot, and thanks for highlighting the relevance and importance of technology and operations. So I think that's fascinating. Let me now invite the director of the school of.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, Professor Chaturvedi, for giving me opportunity to share my thoughts. We just witnessed एक बहुत ओजस्वी संक्षिप्त पर बहुत ओजस्वी भाषण हमने अभी अभी सुना. I am going to pitch myself in the context of presidential address for this conference, what we heard from Professor Ramesh Chand. So that's going to be the context. Food security trilemma. Professor Ramesh Chand spoke on the issue of nutrition in India and the challenges and advances that we have made. So the food security, especially nutritional security of our population, is essential from a Viksit Bharat point of view. Without having food security, nutritional security, we cannot claim to be a Viksit Bharat, a developed India. But it also happens to be the path towards Viksit Bharat, our objective of Viksit Bharat. We need educated and healthy population to be able to generate, produce a competent, productive workforce to capitalize on our demographic dividend. Therefore, this issue is central. Food security, nutritional security is central, whichever way we look at our economy, our aspirations, our inspirations. This issue has three dimensions. One is the supply side. To achieve nutritional security, we must secure supply that our farm, our agriculture produces food in enough quantity and also of diversity so that our needs are satisfied. The second dimension of this issue is the demand side. Our population, our citizens, families should be in a position to afford food that is nutritional. That's the demand side, second side. Third side is generated by two sides. To secure supply of food, we need to incentivize our farmers. We need to make sure that agriculture is remunerative. But that has fiscal consequences. Without MSP is an example. That through MSP we have been able to incentivize our farmers, but it has generated fiscal burden. Similarly, stabilizing prices, making sure that consumers, households can access nutritional food also has a fiscal implication by way of food security, food subsidies. That gives us a food security trilemma. Then the next question we are going to ask is, how have we fared so far? And it turns out that that slides don't seem to be very happy with my. Can I have mouse? Is there somebody here to? I will give it a try. If it doesn't work, then we will. Do you have mouse to? How did you work with it? Oh, it's here, right here. All right. So let us see. Okay, then क्या करेंगे? Any quick suggestion? नहीं तो I'm going to discard it. Yeah. So okay, all right. It's functional now. So this gives a food security trilemma in these threefold objectives: to secure supply side, to keep food affordable, and at the same time making whole thing fiscally sustainable is an impossible objective. Two of these three objectives are difficult to achieve. Three are impossible to achieve. And so far, let's see what we have been instruments we have been using. One instrument has been MSP. So MSP support that has made rice, paddy, and wheat sustainable remunerative for farmers has delivered rich dividends. Other side, the demand side, to make sure that there is a stable supply of food, we have been using procurement. Together, MSP for paddy and wheat, along with procurement, has made sure that we have become a food surplus country. That's a big achievement by all count. Moreover, there's something interesting that has happened. The terms of trade have shifted in favor of agriculture. Agriculture has become remunerative not only for paddy and wheat, but in general. And that shows up in something interesting, that per capita per day food production in India has tripled, more than tripled in our history of independence. As this point was emphasized by Professor Chand also in the press. At the same time, the fiscal burden of these two approaches has also been increasing. Together, food subsidy and agriculture subsidy, they are close to 7% of GDP. The agriculture subsidy itself is more than one-fifth of the value of the output produced in the farm sector. So that's one of the challenges. But the positive side that I feel is the shift in terms of trade. The shifting terms of trade in favor of agriculture have delivered something, have used market mechanism to deliver something that is very little appreciated. So our focus remains on paddy and wheat, but what we are losing sight of the fact that the cereals that enjoy very high subsidy, very high state support, government support, have witnessed lowest growth rate in last 20-30 years. There seems to be inverse relationship between state provided to set of crops and their growth rates. And this has been possible through market mechanisms. As terms of trades have shifted in favor of agriculture, what has happened is that the prices of non-cereal farm produce have increased more than prices of cereals, even though MSPs have been at work, but even then non-cereal food prices have witnessed greater increase in prices. Now, this increase in prices of non-cereal food products would not have been possible if we didn't make advances on the economic front. In the market, after all, it's the demand that drives market. So that is a good signal. And therefore, it re-emphasizes the point made by Professor Ramesh Chand, that how come we are producing so much? Our per capita output has gone up, our demand has gone up, and still studies after studies claim that we are undernutrition. On the undernutrition front, we have not made serious dent. These points highlight that there is something wrong with the studies that claim that India has not made big advances. To reinforce this point, here I show that the share of cereals in farm output has decreased significantly, whereas share of healthy products, fruits, vegetables, dairy products, eggs, has increased tremendously. So the market, through market mechanism, the agriculture through market mechanism has responded greatly. And this again has happened because people are buying, and people are buying because they are consuming. So how come we have that people consuming so much, and also some people, we are also experiencing obesity in India. How come? How do we reconcile obesity on one hand with malnutrition and hunger on the other hand? It seriously tells us that we need to think about these issues. Researchers, we need to think about these issues carefully. At the same time, there's no denying that the bottom of the income pyramid in India struggles in terms of purchasing power. They struggle in terms of purchasing power for food also. So bottom of income pyramid spends more than 70% of their income on food and transportation. That means that they have very little to spend on other manufacturing products, other services. This then in turn shows us that there is when we talk about India is a big market, there effectively India is not a big market yet unless we equip our bottom half of the pyramid population with purchasing power. We will not be able to enjoy our dividend benefits, and we will not be able to make our manufacturing and services sectors competitive, because there's a potential demand that is not being generated. And one indicator of this is and one indicator and also a direction is that agriculture income of average worker is less than one third of income of agriculture of a worker in non-agricultural sector. On top of it, the share of wages in Indian economy is less than 60%. Put these together, and it shows that there is very little purchasing power that is emerging from rural India. And to empower rural India economically, we need to address issues related in agriculture. I think I have some material, but perhaps I should stop here. Maybe if there's opportunity by way of question answer, I can take that up. Thank you so much. How much time do I
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Professor Singh. You actually compromised for less than what you had asked for. But I think absolutely important point, and you have reinforced the idea in terms of how the idea of aspirational India would be well served if we bring in market mechanisms and allow them the space that is needed to deliver what is required to deliver. And in a way, probably you might have further given time in terms of how we can evolve institutions that ensure space for market and bring in the right kind of focus that is there. Something that Professor Abhishek mentioned in terms of how institutions like NIN and others should revisit the kind of benchmarks they fix up and what motivates them to. And this also requires we to understand what kind of conviction patterns are human. Thanks a lot for your address. Let me now bring in Professor Naudiyal for
Good afternoon, and thanks to our association for giving me an opportunity to be here. I have penned down something because what I feel is that most of the time India is reactive rather than addressing the long-term challenges. But I'll talk about them later on. So to begin with, dear esteemed dignitaries, distinguished speakers, delegates, and participants. It's with great pleasure and anticipation that I welcome you to this theme, which is part of the 106th annual conference organized by the Indian Economic Association. This theme resonates deeply with the current economic challenges and opportunities facing our nation. The organizers have brought together a galaxy of economists, scholars, policymakers, and industry experts to share their cutting-edge insights on the critical issues, to enrich our understanding and shape the contours of economic thought and policy. But what I feel that a plausible roadmap appears to be missing somewhere. we are talking about India becoming a developed nation by 2047. Where is the roadmap, and what are the details? The micro details are still missing, and we are largely focusing on the current challenges rather than going for a long term path with what if scenario. That's what I feel. If I talk about different parameters which have been chosen for this particular theme: innovation, technology, infrastructure, and entrepreneurship. Except for entrepreneurship, we are lagging in other parameters, and there is a huge gap between we and others. And let me talk about some of them. So innovation, first of all, I'll talk about with a very brief preamble, and then we'll talk about the data. Technology and innovation are powerful drivers of economic growth. R&D investments are critical in supporting innovations. But it is also essential that we harness the cumulative strength of the global innovation ecosystem in order to nurture opportunities for social development and enhance creative, inclusive, and collaborative growth. Needless to say that scientific publications, research and development, the number of venture capital deals, and patents continue to increase to higher than ever levels, and India must have a greater and ever rising stake in all these. Unfortunately, we don't have so much right now to show off. This calls for India to work towards nurturing innovation as a movement across all states and union territories, instilling innovative business practices through a heightened focus on the technological development, R&D, automation, artificial intelligence, digital transformation, and data-enabled business models for greater efficiency and competitiveness. India remains 40th rank out of 132 economies in the Global Innovation Index 2023, and this ranking was published by the World Intellectual Property Organization. This trajectory is rising for India over the past several years in the Global Innovation Index from a rank of 81 way back in 2015 to 40 in 2023. But if we look at the different parameters of innovation pillar, then we are extremely weak when it comes to infrastructure. We are weak in terms of business sophistication. We are further weak in terms of quality of institutions. We are weak in terms of creative outputs, and we are also weak in terms of human capital and research. So with these kinds of weaknesses, where Switzerland, which is number one country in GII right now, Korea and China, if we compare India with all of them, we are struggling very hard. When it comes to technology, as per the global finance that ranks the world's countries by their technological advancement and capacity to develop and leverage cutting edge technology, China ranks 41st and India ranks 65th. And in fact, both of them have fallen back to their rankings, despite prevailing wisdom that both would advance rapidly. China's internet population at around 73% still falls very far below its economic peers such as Russia, Mexico, and Argentina, or the group of most technologically advanced countries. While China invests significantly into research and development for critical technologies, it lacks the ability to utilize its population for greater technological advancement. India, for its part, has invested very little of its country's GDP into research and development, roughly around 0.7% right of GDP right now. While the establishment, and for other countries, the figures are very, very impressive. For Korea, for example, it's around South Korea, Republic of Korea, 4.5%. For Europe and United States, it's roughly around 3%. So the world is rising in terms of investment in research and development. We aren't really doing good in that context. While the establishment of the National Research Foundation is designed to help increase investment and support for technological and advanced and scientific education and advancement, it is yet to be seen how pivotal role it may play in technological advancement that India desires. It's just parallel to National Research Foundation of the United States, which has dealt with and which has delivered very effectively. We are yet to see how much our institution could deliver. I hope for good. Notably, South Korea remains a world leader in technological advancement, again taking the top slot. Its consumer electronics giant invests invest heavily in research and development, while its citizens combine advanced technological skills with an innovative culture. East Asia is well represented in top 20 with Japan, Taiwan, and Singapore. When it comes to entrepreneurship, India is ranked 4th out of 51 countries in having a quality entrepreneurship ecosystem, a new global report said in February 2023, reflecting the steady rise in the nation's business environment over the years. The ranking of India in the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, GEM we call it in short, and National Entrepreneurship Context Index, NECI it is referred to as, report is a drastic turnaround following a much lower score in 2021, which was 16th overall for India. India's latest score of 6.1 reflects a steady rise in country's overall entrepreneurial environment over the years. India's NECI score rose from 5.8 in 2019, ranked 6th among GEM nations, to 6.0 in 2020, ranked 4th. However, there was a dip in 2021 with a score of 5, which was barely sufficient, and a rank of 16th, the report said. GEM defines the entrepreneurial context of a particular economy in terms of 13 different characteristics, labeled the entrepreneurship framework conditions. As we gather here today, we embark on a journey of exploration and collaboration, seeking to unravel the complexities of our economic landscape and pave the way for more sustainable and equitable future. There are silver linings despite all these, gloomy pictures. There are blues as well. But above all, there are brighter hopes and a firm and well-meant government in the saddle that is capable of plugging the holes and providing much enlightening and facilitating policy guidance, along with the fiscal support to transform a struggling India to a resilient, confident, mighty, and prosperous Bharat. May this theme be a catalyst for new ideas, enduring partnerships, and impactful solutions. But I look forward for more analysis on what if scenario, because the world is never a linear trajectory. Ukraine war has upset all the calculations that the nations have made, the world had made. So similar kinds of events might crop up in the future. How do we deal with them, and how India can attain its goal in 2047? So with that, I wind up here, and Jai Hind, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Professor Noria. Let me now invite Dr. Singh for his remarks.
So first of all, let me thank Professor Malhotra to invite me here and share my thoughts with all of you. It's been a very interesting, I must mention, day so far. We have had a very good talk by the VC and then very scholarly work presented as always by Professor Ramesh Chand. He's always sitting, and I think it's just a learning curve goes up listening to his 40-45 minutes discussion and the way he presents the facts in a written paper. So I think it's been a great learning curve here today. I must mention that I came in at the last minute because two of the members were not here, and I'm taking this opportunity, and I thank once again Professor Malhotra for providing this. I wanted to bring in, and I link with the story which Professor Noriel has narrated, and I want to bring in the story of the fiscal and the financial world. As we all know, as economists, India continues to be the fastest growing economy in the world, and according to the IMF projections, that trend is going to continue given the demographic dividend. The Article 4 study, about 150 odd pages, which the IMF prepared and it is released day before yesterday, underlines and underscores the same thing. It also mentions, the Article 4, that the policies that have been minted on the anvil in our country in the last 10 years have set a foundation where growth for the next one decade will be the fastest in the world. With the growth at that pace which we are recording, now the important issue is how is this growth going to be sustained? However, the aspect which have been discussed, various aspects which have been discussed so far play a role. And I want to share with you the role of the financial sector, which I think is most important, and like providing oxygen for the whole healthy body. The banking sector therein plays the most important and significant role given the banking sector's prominent position in our financial world. Of course, we have been reading, and I think their is going to expand. We have been reading that the privatization of public sector banks could be on the anvil. Also, the growth, deposit, and credit of the private sector is larger, significantly larger than the public sector banks. That means the private sector banks are beginning to play a more significant role. My own feeling is in the next 25 years, the role of the public sector banks cannot be wished away. They will continue to play an important role despite the fact that the private sector is recording a higher growth both in deposits and credit. Globally speaking, the domestic credit as percentage of GDP for the world, USA especially, is in the range of 225% of GDP, for UK about 150% of GDP. India is still around 50% of GDP. Credit of banks as percentage of GDP. The other source which can provide finance is the stock markets. Market capitalization in the USA is around 200%. In India, it is still around 100%. Though we have been talking about the digital world and India is taking a lead in it, the commercial bank branch network in the USA for 1 lakh adults is around 35. In the UK, similar. In India, we are around 15. The other component in the financial world is the non-banking finance companies. Obviously, their role in the last few years has been prominent. And if we look at the data from 2014, where they accounted the credit from non-banking finance companies accounting from 8.8% risen to about 12.3% according to the latest data released by the Reserve Bank of India. The story of the banking sector also needs to be looked into along with the credit growth, the non-performing assets. The reforms brought in by this government in the last decade have been very impressive, be it in terms of the insolvency and bankruptcy code, and I understand Delhi School is undertaking a study on it. I'm so happy to know that, or the formation of asset reconstruction companies. The last point that I want to make in this segment is the financial inclusion, which we all know started with the Jan Dhan, landed up with the Jam Trinity, and now has about 51 crore accounts under the Jan Dhan. The way it has empowered women has also been very impressive. The digital transactions that have taken place since April 2020, after we learned from COVID, UPI has witnessed exponential growth with a surge in transaction volumes and the number of participation. It has reached a milestone of 10 billion transactions. I want to now conclude by bringing three things to your notice. The first, the role of banks in finances, if seen from the angle of ratio to GDP, is still way behind than advanced countries. Our central banks, our commercial banks only account for about 91% if looked at the assets. The provident funds and pension funds are increasing from 5% in 2010 to 14% in 2022. The mutual fund role has also increased from 7% in 2010 to 16% in 22. We are way behind the US. Looking at the rural sector, the role of commercial banks has increased from 2012 to 2018, the latest data that was available, from 25% to 47%. The role of the professional money lenders, given the Jan Dhan scheme that the Prime Minister announced, has crashed from 28% in 2012 to 16% in 2018. I share this data with you because looking ahead and the roadmap that was just discussed by Professor Noriel, I think is very important. If we have to achieve 5 trillion or a $30 trillion economy, the banking sector, including the non-banking sector, will have to prepare to provide those resources. And given that we have seen the share of private sector rising, private sector banks increasing, the share of non-banking finance companies increasing, one will have to be ready to look into the regulatory and supervisory aspects as well as the capabilities of these institutions to lend to an economy which is, if it is 5, double the size, and if it is 30, as we know, 10 times the size we are today. Is the banking system really ready? Have we prepared a roadmap? And I don't know whether that has been done. Over and above, what will be the sectors which will be financed, which will be the sunset and sunrise sectors, and what will be the role of the commercial banks between themselves and the commercial banks divided into private and the public. Another risk that has now emerged is the climate risk. That is immediately going to impact most probably an agrarian economy like ours, where agriculture still accounts for about 20% of GDP and sits on the balance sheets of the financial institutions in a significant way. What happens to the balance sheets of those financial institutions? I think as economists, looking ahead, providing support, research support to the Prime Minister's idea of increasing our economy to that size, becoming Viksit Bharat, we have a role to play in providing research-based policy path and roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Mr. Sri, for a very intervention today. Friends, colleagues, it's already 2:30 now. I think all the panelists have done great cooperation with us to manage time. I would very much like to open the floor at least for 5 to 7 minutes to pick up one or two interventions. And this is between you and Dan. I wanted panelists to get one more chance just to have something that they want to pick up as has emerged very clearly. The idea of quality of government, which Balu talked about, he has left now. So that part is out of our discussion. But the multiple strategy that Aluki talked about, I think is very much there. Agriculture and role of markets is what Professor Ram talked about. We heard innovation and technology that Professor Norial talked about, and of course banking and non-banking sector and their role in Viksit Bharat is something that Dr. Singh talked about. So these five speakers are now there. Any clarification? No speeches, just any clarification that you want to seek on methodology or any particular question that comes to your mind. So I see two hands, I see three, four, and that's where we end. So I would just pick up all the four questions. I would start from there at the end, and then we come to the lady here. So yes.
Yeah. Indigenous. मेरा एक कंफ्यूजन है मैं डॉक्टर विजय कुमार बिहार से आता हूँ मेरा पहला कंफ्यूजन ये है कि पहले पढ़ते थे कि ह्यूमन ट्रांसलेशनल है वो ये मान के चल रहा है कि मानव दयालु भी होते हैं एक कंफ्यूजन यहाँ पे ये होता है इसका क्वेश्चन है
एक ही रखते हैं अभी एक
most of the villages are not cultivating them anymore. So there is this loss in techniques. How do we propose to bring that back? And most of us, since we have lost them from our diet as well, most of us. Then what would be the benefit if we bring them back? How we propose to incorporate them?
I am Dr. Muthuraja from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. I have only two questions. One, how and when we are going to move from assemble India to manufacture India? Number two, we are in three-tier system, local, state and union government. Among these three, there are distances in terms of technology, in terms of finance, in terms of resources. Is it possible to bring the distance? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have 2-3 issues, and any panelist can address. First is, when we talk about Viksit Bharat or Aspirational India, so far I could not get any conceptual clarity on it and methodological framework. This is one issue. What do we mean by Viksit Bharat? Whether it is the issue of health, sanitation, water, inequality, poverty, GDP, all these are number of issues, and you rightly mentioned about set of parameters. So first issue is this. Second is data. Data collection and validation. So far, lot of in newspapers also questions are being raised related to GDP, and some are saying that the GDP, current GDP is 6.7%. Then another is saying it is all estimated 5.5. There is no informal sector data, only production data is there, expenditure data. So there are lot of issues related to estimation of GDP and of course quality. For example, if you look at the only one component of service sector contributing around 23% of GDP and employment is 2%. So can we think such kind of Bharat or Viksit Bharat where only 2% of employment is generating 20?
Thank you. We have to. No. Please cooperate. Please kindly take your seat. I would give it to Professor Ram Singh for his response and then to other panel.
Thank you so much. I will quickly respond to all three questions that have come up so far. The first is conceptual human beings are assumed to be rational, selfish, along with marginal utility being positive. These assumptions have led to perceived scarcity of all resources. None of these three assumptions are realistic assumptions. So I think, for us, the unit of analysis has to be ideally society, but to start with households. So we can explain more of Indian phenomena using household as unit of analysis rather than individual. And this speaks to what Professor Chaturvedi pointed out in the beginning, that we need a solid Indian framework of thinking. So at this point, only this much. Second point is related to food cereals, combined with millets, pulses, and edible oils. Our agricultural performance has been disappointing only on this with respect to these farm producers. And this is very unfortunate because around 20% of cultivated land in India is mostly rain-fed with very little irrigation facilities. But that also means that there is scope to cultivate these crops. We are water shortage economy society, but we produce water and export water-rich rice and paddy. We are exporting water even though we are water shortage. Now the question is, why should we promote cold cereals and how? We should promote because they are more nutritious. So to secure nutritional security, we need to produce coarse cereals, millets, pulses, and edible oils. We need them also to become Atmanirbhar. We also need them to promote this to raise farmers' income. So that's the way. That's where the scope is. That's where the productivity yields can be maximum. And how to do it? Very briefly, I will say that we should use market mechanism. Three things: extend scope of MSP, state export of procurement to these commodities. Use market mechanisms combined with some kind of insurance, Fasal Bima Yojana, Prime Minister's Fasal Bima Yojana, sharpen this, improve its effectiveness. That would be the process to achieve these objectives. And third was about GDP. If I can take just 10 seconds, Professor, you asked a question, and if you want to listen, Professor is taking sounds about the GDP. I give you a rough estimate. Today, our per capita income in dollar terms is about 2.5 thousand. Even if we go by the most conservative estimate, that we grow only at a 6%. By 2047, our GDP per capita in dollar terms will be at least 10,000. That will, at most conservative, most pessimistic account, we would be in the middle income group. The question we should ask is the 6% that's the best we can do? I think that's our bottom line. The question we have to ask is how to arrive at attain 9 to 10% growth rates. And I can tell you more of that later.
Well, many questions are there, and most of the time we are concerned with the data and indices which are published by the World Forum. I will give you one kind of data. It is not directly relevant to the economy, but I am giving you a state of press freedom in 2023. Now see who are ahead of India. The press freedom in India is at the rank of 161. Now ahead of India is Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Nepal, Bhutan. My God. So this is something which is happening in terms of jugglery with the data. So my dear friends, don't be after the data. You look at India, India is happening, India is shining, India is booming. So you have to believe that. You think about your lifestyle, your standard of living, all the time cursing and talking negative things. I don't think this way India will go. And you go to the S&P and you go to the Standard Poor and you go to the World Bank and IBRD and other institutions, all economic entities. They are not having an agreement. One institute will say India will grow by 7.6. The other will say India will grow by 6. The other will say India will grow by 9. Which you have to believe. You have to believe yourself. I am telling you. Everybody is Indian, at least 65 crore Indian people are having smartphones in their hand. 120 crore people are having account. As somebody was telling about Jan Dhan Yojana 54 or something like here is that the economic development plan we do have. That's what Make in India program is being launched. It is very clear cut that we are doing. Jal Jeevan Mission, every house is going to have tap water in their house. So 500 gigawatt non-conventional energy is India's target, which will make India a world power in terms of energy. That's what I wanted to make a kind of clarity. Thank you very much. So thank you. I think I thank all the participants, those who asked questions. जो आपने सवाल पूछा वो बहुत ही गहरा सवाल है और उसके जवाब में जैसा एक लाइन में प्रोफेसर राम ने कहा कि ये हमारा और वेस्ट का एक बड़ा पुराना कंटेस्टेशन है जहाँ इंडिविजुअलिज्म और कलेक्टिव एक्शन दोनों का डिस्टिंक्शन होता है. तो कैसे हम ह्यूमन बीइंग को डिफाइन करें और उसको क्या सिर्फ एक इकोनॉमिक एंटिटी के रूप में देखें, ये एक सवाल बहुत ही गहरा है. डेटा पर जैसा आपने कहा अलग ने जवाब भी दिया. कई सेक्टर्स में हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि डेटा का यूज और उसकी अवेलेबिलिटी और उसका रिलीज होना समय पे ये अत्यंत आवश्यक है और उसका हम सही ढंग से उपयोग भी कर सकते हैं। अभी हम लोगों ने मेरे संस्थान में ट्रेड का डेटा 1960 से लेकर अभी तक का 4 बार जो रिव्यू हो चुका है उसको एक टाइम सीरीज में दिया है। तो अब RIS अकेला ऐसा कंट्री का रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूशन है जिसके पास में 1960 से लेके 2022 तक का सारे वर्ल्ड का ट्रेड स्टैटिस्टिक्स एक टाइम सीरीज में अभी मुझे लगता है ऐसा हम लोगों को कई क्षेत्रों में करना पड़ता है। मध्य प्रदेश में हमने मध्य प्रदेश का अपना स्टैटिस्टिकल कमीशन बनाया तो डेटा के बारे में एक बड़ा मेजर नेशनल मुझे लगता है कि रिवॉल्यूशन होने की जरूरत है और ये मुद्दा बहुत ही गंभीर मुद्दा है। हमारा डेटा कितना है, हमने कितना प्रोग्रेस किया, कितना नहीं किया, ये बहुत ही गंभीर विषय है और इसको कोई 4 मिनट में नहीं कहा जा सकता। उसके लिए मैं कहूँगा प्रोफेसर मल्होत्रा से एक अलग सेशन होना चाहिए और स्टेट्स की जो कैपेसिटी है डेटा कलेक्ट करने की, उनकी जो एबिलिटी है डेटा को एफिशिएंसी कैलकुलेट नहीं कर सकते वहाँ के स्टैटिस्टिक्स के लोग स्टेट्स में, तो हमें वो भी एक ध्यान देना पड़ेगा। तीसरा इम्पोर्टेंट बात है जैसा कि आलोक जी कहते हैं कि कंजस्टेशन होगा। RBI का जैसे एक डेटा रहा कि इंडिया का ग्रोथ 7% होगा, ADP का 6.5 पे आया, IMF ने पहले 6 पे करा तो उसको रिवाइज 6.5 पे किया, उन्होंने 7.4 पे चले गए। तो ये कंटेस्टेशन चलेंगे और ये अच्छी है, हेल्थी डिबेट है, सबका मेथोडोलॉजी अलग हो सकता है कैलकुलेट करने का, तो वो प्लुरलिटी ऑफ पर्सपेक्टिव के भी जगह हो और डेटा के बिना तो बात नहीं। तो इन शब्दों के साथ अपने पैनलिस्ट को मैं धन्यवाद देता हूँ, एक जोरदार तालियां के लिए हो जाएंगी।
Thank you so much, experts, for your inspiring and inspirational speech. I would request all the members and participants to move downstairs for lunch. We expect you to be back by 3:15